What's going on with you? How are you? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Mr. Ogunlana in your ear, bringing you some new flavor in your ear. Here come the brand new flavor in your ear. Time for new flavor in your ear. All right. Saturday, November the 4th, 4:03 p.m. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking, just continuing some of the stuff that I was talking about on the tape that I had did about entrepreneurship and how it's just not supposed to be easy. I have this new client. Client's name is Pentius. They do a lot of business with in the finance industry, and just kind of thinking about it and looking at it, and and I'm just in some of the precursor experience that I've had with them to date. It just kind of shows. My voice coming back, by the way. I'm excited about that. It shows that it's just not going to be easy. And here I thought, this is potentially a solid client, and something that I could possibly quote unquote depend on. And I haven't even started the project yet. And just going through my process, I've saw already that it's just, there are some things that's just, it's just not going to be easy. And there isn't any such thing as a free lunch. And no matter how much I want to make it easy, it's just not going to be easy. This whole process is going to be a long and arduous process, stabilizing and gathering clients. It's just not going to be easy. I know I've said that already like 8 times. And I'm saying that just simply because it's really, for me, when I listen to this, first of all, I want to appreciate myself. This is a message from the past, so that when it reaches you in the future, you can make a great decision in your present time. And I just want to let you know that I'm proud of you. You're doing a great job. And this isn't easy. None of this whole process requires a lot of work. And it's through these records that you are doing that is recording this whole process, so that when you get back to this a year from now and you just kind of hear what you've gone through in order to get to where you will be, you'll see that there are no awards for it. The reward is the shiny, the cars, the houses, the clothes, the looking good, feeling good, the women, and all of that. That's the prize. And, only some of us get to that point. And so I just wanted to say that, I had an interesting conversation with my mother today. And this was about, and I'm going to switch everything up. This was referring to my grandfather. Now, I know I haven't said much about my grandfather on these tapes because it just didn't lead itself. These last few conversations didn't really lend themselves well to bringing him up yet, but I think this is a great introduction to bring my grandfather into these tapes. My grandfather's name is Robert Lee Evans Sr. He transitioned, I know it was September the 11th, but I'm trying to remember the year. I want to say 2009, and I think he was about 72 or 73 years old, and he had a business called Red Top Realty. He was a drafter for Lockheed Martin for about 50 years before he retired. He was a bishop of First Christian Community Episcopal Church. He was a loving father, loving grandfather. He taught me everything there is to know about entrepreneurship at a very early age. What he used to do was, back a long time ago, and he was actually the first person that gave me my first computer, believe it or not. When I think I was about like 8 or 9 years old, he brought a computer in a bag to my house and told me to put it together. And that was my introduction to computers. And so he used to come to my mother's house, pick me and my brother up, or my brother and I. He used to pick us up, and what he used to do is he used to take us around to his properties. He owned several properties around Atlanta, and what we used to do is we used to be the grass cutting crew. and so he used to pick us up, and he paid us with Blimpie sandwiches. and I'm laughing because I used to look so forward to the steak biscuits from Mrs. Winters in the morning. Like, he used to pay us, he used to take us every Saturday. I used to be like, oh my God, I can't wait. He used to pick us up, man. Like, he'd take us to Mrs. Winters, get us that little the steak biscuit. And man, I used to tell them things like he used to get us as many steak biscuits as we wanted. And I didn't know that was our payment for the day. And he used to fill us up on those. So shouts out to the child labor laws that wasn't out, that was not enforced at the time, because we used to get paid steak. We used to get paid steak biscuits. But anyway, and Blimpie sandwiches, that was our payment. So we used to go and we used to cut the grass. He used to teach us how to cut the grass, he used to teach, actually, he taught me so much about life. He had so much wisdom. And, he touched so many lives while he was on earth. He touched so many people. And the reason I'm bringing him up now is because I had a conversation with my mother about a church that he owned. And the church that he owned, First Christian Community Episcopal Church. I remember when that church started. It started like in his house, and then we went from having church at his house to having church at one of the properties that he owned, and then from there we went to the recreational center, and then from there he eventually got a building, and then from there he got another building, which is the building I think that's currently still there. And I had a conversation with my mother about him and his real estate company, and he bought that church for $20,000. I think it was either $20,000 or $25,000. And today, the appraisal of that church, I believe, is over $200,000. That was the kind of real estate investor he was. Like I've said before, when I was speaking about limiting beliefs, I think he bought the house that I inherited. I think he bought that house for about $20,000, and that house is worth well over $100,000 right now. So this is the kind of man and real estate investor he was. And so, the conversation went a little bit like this. So they're having church right now, and it's still in my family. And, God bless my aunt. She's the pastor of the church, and she's a soldier, because she's dealing with a very difficult illness, but she is still the pastor of the church, and she's doing it. And, I had expressed to her the significance of using that property to do some good things in terms of, with the property and with the money that could be utilized because of the property, i.e., taking out, 100, maybe 125,000, getting a small loan and buying an apartment complex with the money, or, investing in commercial real estate, or doing something like that. And the reason I had the conversation with her, and the conversation just kind of went there, was because we were also talking about, Decatur and how Decatur and Atlanta, just in terms of, so this whole tape is turning from entrepreneurship to real estate investing, because Decatur, and this is Atlanta, Georgia, or, the metro Atlanta area, and Decatur is actually the property values in Decatur. I mean, if you just kind of look at the outlook of Decatur, it's changed so drastically from the time that my grandfather bought the property. With gentrification, with all the renovations of all of the houses in the area, that the property values of in Decatur right now is through the roof. And, we were talking about what we wanted to do with the property that I'm currently in. And I had expressed that I believe that the land, there should be some sort of investment in the land, or excuse me, not necessarily investment, but taking that home, selling it, and then using that money to invest. I'll be right back with you after these messages. And so as we had the conversation and we talked, I had thought, like, okay, well, maybe we could possibly sit and wait to see what kind of development is going to occur, because right now in Decatur, for anybody who's stumbling upon this this tape, it's you should definitely be looking at Decatur, Georgia right now, because there's a lot of investing that's happening right now, and I think it has something to do with the it has something to do. I love how people ignore. It's like people are so mean on the road. I'm driving right now. That's the Lear you hear in the background. I'm in the cockpit, and it's so funny sometimes as I drive around, and people can be really mean on the road, boy. They don't want to let you out, but anyway. Decatur, just in terms of real estate investing, is a hot place right now, because the land, everything about this place is being renovated. I mean, there are several homes on the street that I was raised on that, I mean, pretty much 80% of the original population, when I say original, I mean the generation that grew up with me in the neighborhood, is gone. And it's all new development. They're literally tearing down houses, right? They're buying people out, and they're building right now in the neighborhood. And so, it's still early right now in terms of, selling. I feel like right now it's still early. And I think that, given probably over the next 5 years, maybe even 10 years, because they're actually, my mother, she works at one of the local recreational centers in the area, and they have some big changes. And this was this rec center had already undergone some renovations, and this is still in Decatur. Had already undergone some renovations, but they're really about to renovate it. And that shows how much money is in the area right now. And so really over the next 5 to 10 years, we're looking at a property spike in this area, because right now the house right next to me, which I know does not have the same amount of square footage, sold for about $150,000 right next to me. And, so I know that my house is at least worth that, but I'm going to wait. And, the challenge is, waiting and really selling at the right time. Because what I'd like to do, and this is again on my B list, I want to be a real estate investor, and I feel like I want to get in that industry somehow. I know maybe somebody will listen to this tape or contact me. if so, Google Mr. Ogunlana if you're in real estate investing, or send me an email. That's diran.ogunlana@gmail.com. That's spelled DIRAN.OGUNLANA@gmail.com. shoot me an email if you know about real estate investing, or if you study, that industry, or you know people in the area, or if you're as fascinated about it as I am. I get that from my grandfather, because I feel like just with the two, because he had much more property than what we now have in terms of what our family owns. Because now I know it's the house that I'm in, and then I know it's the church that he bought. Those are the only two that's in our, that we still own. But he had much more land, and that man, even in his afterlife, he's still blessing his family. And so I think that there is much to be said about making the proper set of investments in real estate, because I think that if the proper investments could be made, then you could actually have some stability. And I think everything especially in the United States should be, if you talk about like entrepreneurship, and let's go back to entrepreneurship for a second, like really what I think, and this is over the last 15 years of my experience, that had I spent more time investing in real estate while I was doing software development, I would have been much further ahead now. I had started to invest in the last 5 years of my career. So like maybe 2015 up, I started to invest in the house that I'm in now, because I know, and I looked up, because the house that I'm in now, there was carpet in that house for about 30 years. And luckily, when I was doing some renovations to the kitchen, because the kitchen floor was almost in disrepair, and we had to do some major foundation work, they found the original hardwood floor in that house. And when I say original hardwood floor, I'm talking about the original hardwood floor that was there before my grandfather bought the house, which is 30 years ago. So that house is about, I want to say 70 or 80 years old. And so that's how old that hardwood floor is in that house. And I uncovered that gold mine, and now the entire house, the hardwood floor has been exposed, sanded, refinished in the house. So that definitely added to the value of the house. And, so there were other things about the house that I found that I'm glad I started to make investments. But the point that I'm making is so moving forward, I'm going to be, and this is my challenge to any of the freelancers, especially as I go back and listen to this, is find other ways, even small ways to invest in real estate now, because that's really, if you think about financial freedom, you could do a number of things. So here's what I was thinking. Here's my ideas, and this is kind of what my approach is long term in terms of how I'm going to transfer my software talents and skills into real estate and into other things that will equal my financial freedom. So what I'm moving towards is purchasing existing softwares that have existing customer bases. So maybe mobile apps, buying into companies or purchasing them outright, starting at $10,000 and up. And, with existing customer bases, 10 to 100 users, possibly with 100 users. The more users, the better. And then what I plan on doing is, starting with that first one, I'm going to take the existing software and customer base and upgrade the software, update it, market it more, and then increase the customer base, thereby increasing the profit margin, right? And then what my plan is to be out of the company in a year or two, definitely starting out with an exit strategy in mind. I want to do that about 2 or 3 times. Meanwhile, I'm going to be taking that money that I'm going to be having, that I'm going to be pulling out of those companies, and investing in real estate. And right now I was looking at Georgia MLS. There are some houses in Atlanta right now that they can be bought for about $10,000 to $15,000. There are also other houses that can be bought for less than that at the courthouse sales. So each county has I believe they're called, I have to think about it. They are, they have, it's coming to me. they are, for some reason I'm thinking like raffles, but I know they're not called raffles. They're, oh man, I can't remember the name of but basically it's like they sell the houses on the courthouse steps, or, at particular places in the city. And they basically, and this is what I hear, this hadn't been confirmed, but I know that this happens. I just can't, I have to find out where they are. But to make a really long story short, I know there was a house in my neighborhood that sold for like $20. And I looked into some houses in my neighborhood also with some, buying them via, purchasing or paying their back taxes. But from what I read on that, it's not as simple as paying the back taxes on a house and then you automatically get it. You pay the back taxes on the house, then the person, when they get ready to take the house, when the people who owe the back taxes on the house get ready to, keep the house, then they have to pay you back plus whatever interest you paid. If they can't do that, then it goes through another process. And then based on the end result of that process, you may or may not end up with the house. So that's a risky form of the investment. It's better to get a house that's in foreclosure or a house that the bank, owns, but is leasing, or not leasing, but selling. And so there are many ways to get houses, and so that's what I'm planning on doing. And what I want to actually do instead of I don't really want to get into residential real estate, because from what I read, and I've read a couple books, and this is, I gotta get back up on my real estate investing book game. But from what I read, having say like 10 houses, that means that's about 10 contracts that has to be drawn up, and possibly, 10 loans over time, and, dealing with 10, houses that could be in different areas in Atlanta could be really cumbersome. That's why a lot of people get like leasing agencies, and they essentially get property management companies to essentially manage the property and the contracts by putting bodies in the house, dealing with the facilities management, and then they just take their stuff off the top, which is fine. But, maybe I'll look in that model, but I'm really not interested in getting into real estate or residential. What I'm more interested in is getting into apartments, because I can get one apartment complex with 50 units, and that's one contract. Right, one main property contract, and then based on that master level contract, then you get into devising the contracts for each for renting out each unit. There's also duplexes, which would also be like I don't know if that fits into residential or apartment real estate. And I was also looking at storage facilities, because I know that that's also another industry. And then commercial real estate. So I'm really interested in those three, because now we're really talking about, $1 million, unless you're really getting into like some of those old fashioned, old homes that are worth millions and millions of dollars. You can get one apartment complex, and if you do the numbers right, you can have the loan paid off in the first 5 years. And so these are some of the things that I've been thinking about. I definitely want to get into real estate. I'm attracting that to myself by just saying it here now. And so, like I said, eventually people will be listening to these, and somebody will hear this and they will contact me. This is, you see, I'm being very optimistic about this. And so that's kind of the conversation that I had with my mother today that led me into this real estate investing conversation here on this Dreamcast. And so I guess in the short term, what I'm going to be doing is dealing with these clients. I have to, the next thing, I guess the next logical step for this is I want to get a lot of clients. And I think that's what Upwork is providing for me, is it's putting me in front of a lot of people who have money to invest in software. And so and I have to get a goal amount of clients that I want to start working with. I think, having about 100 different clients that I work with over time will be good. That will be a good starting number. But I have to figure out what that over time is, possibly in a year's time, but that's very aggressive. I have some short-term financial goals that I'm working on, and I also have some things that I want to do in terms of real estate investment that I want to do here in the next, hopefully, in the next 2 to 3 years. And it could be that this house that I'm sitting in might spike in value over the next 2 to 3 years, and then that might be everything I need. So wanted to take a little time while I was running some errands to kind of share with you, share with myself and anybody who cares to listen about some of the conversation that I've had today. Once again, entrepreneurship, especially freelancing, isn't just not easy. I'm realizing it's just not easy, and I'm appreciating the fact that it's not easy, because that means to me that I'm pushing the limit. Because if it was easy starting, but I guess where I am in the game, so to speak, it's showing that I'm definitely pushing the limit. So I challenge myself, especially when I listen to this in the future, to continue to push that limit. Push the limit, push the limit, push the limit. And for anybody else who's listening, I challenge you to push the limit. I challenge you to smile in the face of adversity, and I challenge you to do the work in order to be successful. Once again, if your head is hung low for whatever reason, do like my dad said and raise it. Until we speak the next time, have a good one.